It was a Tuesday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but then I remembered the window installation I'd scheduled weeks ago. Opening the door, I was greeted by a man in his mid-40s, weathered hands, and a confident smile. "Hi there. I'm Mike from Clearview Windows," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Here to install your new bay window." I invited him in, suddenly aware of the mess in my living room. Books stacked on the coffee table, yesterday's mug still sitting by the couch. But Mike didn't seem to notice, his eyes already assessing the old window frame, mentally calculating the work ahead. I had been dreading this day, not because of the installation itself, but because of what it represented. This was the house I'd shared with Sarah for 7 years before the divorce. Every change felt like erasing another piece of our history. The window had been cracked during a storm last fall, our last fall together, and I'd put off replacing it through winter and spring. But now, with summer heat making the poorly insulated space unbearable, I'd finally made the call. "This shouldn't take more than a few hours," Mike said, already unloading his tools onto a tarp he'd spread beneath the window. "I'll need your help for just a minute when we get to mounting the main piece." I nodded, not fully understanding what would be required of me, but reluctant to admit my complete ignorance about home improvements. Sarah had always handled these things. As Mike worked, I tried to stay out of his way, occasionally glancing over from my laptop where I pretended to work. There was something hypnotic about watching someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Each movement was precise, economical. No wasted motion. No hesitation. I envied that certainty. 2 hours later, Mike called me over. The old window was gone, leaving a gaping rectangular hole in my living room wall. The new window unit sat carefully propped against the wall nearby, gleaming with promise. "I need your help now," he said. "This is the tricky part. The window needs to go in perfectly straight the first time, or we risk damaging the frame." He positioned me in front of the opening, my back to the empty space where the window would go. I could feel the warm outside air against my back, hear the distant sound of neighborhood kids playing. That's when it happened. The installer braced me against the frame, his hands firm on my shoulders. "Line me up," he said, and didn't step back. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what he meant. The weight of his hands on my shoulders felt strangely reassuring, yet uncomfortable. Was I supposed to move? Was I supposed to stay perfectly still? The moment stretched between us like taffy, growing thinner but never breaking. "I don't understand," I finally admitted. Mike chuckled. "Sorry, industry jargon. I need you to stand exactly where you are as a reference point while I position the window. Your body gives me a straight line to work with." His explanation made perfect sense, and yet I still felt oddly vulnerable standing there, serving as a human plumb line. Let me explain why this moment matters. It's not just about installing a window. It's about trust, about literally putting yourself in someone else's hands and believing they know what they're doing. In that moment, I realized how rarely I allowed myself to be in that position anymore. After Sarah left, I'd built walls higher than any house could contain. I'd convinced myself that self-sufficiency was the same as strength. Don't let anyone too close. Don't depend on anyone. Don't be vulnerable. These had become my unspoken mantras. Yet here I was, allowing a stranger to position me, to use my body as a tool in his work. The irony wasn't lost on me. I thought back to the last time I'd allowed myself to be this vulnerable. It had been with Sarah, of course. We'd gone hiking in the mountains, and on the way down, my knee, an old college basketball injury, had given out. Without a word, she'd braced herself against me, becoming my human crutch for the 2-mile descent. "Lean on me," she'd said. And I had. But that was before I found the text messages. Before the late nights at the office turned out to be something else entirely. Before I learned that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who can hurt us the most deeply. "Perfect, don't move." Mike's voice pulled me back to the present. I could feel him moving behind me, the weight of the window frame sliding into place. There was something intimate about the moment, though nothing inappropriate was happening. It was the simple human connection, the literal support of one person for another, that felt so foreign to me now. "Have you been installing windows long?" I asked, trying to distract myself from the strange vulnerability I was feeling. 23 years, he replied, his voice slightly strained from supporting the window's weight. "Started working with my father when I was 16. He taught me everything I know." "Must be nice," I said, "having that kind of certainty about what you're meant to do." Mike was quiet for a moment, focused on his task. Then he said, "It wasn't always certain. I quit for 5 years in my 20s. Thought I wanted something different, something more impressive to tell people at parties. Went to community college, got an associate's degree in business. Hated every minute of it. I wanted to turn around, to see his face as he spoke, but I remained still, aware of my role as his reference point. What brought you back?" I asked. "Life has a way of lining us up where we need to be," he said. "My dad got sick. Lung cancer. I came back to help with the family business while he went through treatment. By the time he recovered, I'd remembered why I loved this work in the first place. Which is, I get to see the results of my work every day. I make homes better, more beautiful, more efficient. And at the end of each job, I can point to something concrete and say, I did that." His words resonated with me. In my own work as a graphic designer, I often felt disconnected from the impact of what I created. Logos and websites and brochures that went out into the world without any real feedback about whether they made a difference. "Okay, we're good," Mike finally said, stepping back. "You can move now." I turned around and gasped softly. The new window transformed the room. Light poured in through the 3 panels, creating a sense of spaciousness that hadn't existed before. The view of my small backyard garden was now framed perfectly, like a living painting on my wall. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely moved by the transformation. Mike nodded, pleased with my reaction. "That's why I do this. That look right there." He gestured toward my face. "Now, let me show you how to operate the locks and the ventilation features." As he demonstrated the window's mechanics, I found myself studying him more carefully. There was a wedding ring on his left hand, worn but present. A small scar above his right eyebrow. Eyes that crinkled at the corners when he explained something he was particularly proud of. This man had a whole life outside of this moment, outside of my home. He had his own stories, his own heartbreaks, his own triumphs. "You know," I said, interrupting his explanation of the window's energy efficiency, "I've been avoiding this for months. Getting the window replaced." Mike paused, giving me his full attention. "Any particular reason?" I hesitated, unsure why I was suddenly willing to share personal details with this stranger. Maybe it was because he had just shared with me. Maybe it was because he would walk out of my life in an hour, taking my confession with him. Or maybe it was simply that moment of physical connection, being braced against the frame, that had somehow opened a channel between us. My ex-wife and I bought this house together. Every change I make feels like, I don't know, like I'm erasing her, even though I'm the one who stayed. Mike nodded slowly. "I get that. After my divorce, I couldn't even rearrange the furniture for a year. Slept on the same side of the bed, even though the other side was empty. There was a moment of understanding between us, 2 strangers connected by similar wounds. I hadn't expected this level of openness from the window installer, but somehow it felt right. "Does it get easier?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Mike turned back to the window, making a small adjustment to the latch. "Not easier exactly. Different. One day you realize you've moved the furniture because it makes more sense for you, not because you're trying to preserve something or erase something." He stepped back, admiring his work. "Kind of like this window. You didn't get it to forget the old one. You got it because you deserve something that works properly, that lets in the right amount of light." His words hit me with unexpected force. I hadn't thought about it that way before. The window wasn't about Sarah at all. It was about me, about making this space work for my life now. As Mike packed up his tools, I felt a shift inside me, subtle but significant. For months, I'd been living in a kind of suspended animation, neither moving forward nor truly acknowledging the past. But standing here in my living room, with sunlight streaming through the new window, I could see things more clearly. "All finished," Mike announced, folding up the tarp. "Just need you to sign off on the work order, and I'll be out of your hair." As I signed the paper, I found myself saying, "Thank you. Not just for the window." Mike smiled, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes we all need someone to brace us, even just for a moment. He handed me my copy of the receipt. "Enjoy your new view." After he left, I stood for a long time looking through the new window. The garden Sarah had planted was still there, the rose bushes now slightly overgrown, the bird feeder empty. I made a mental note to fill it tomorrow, to prune the roses this weekend. Small steps. I thought about that moment, the installer bracing me against the frame, saying line me up, and not stepping back. There was a metaphor there, about support and perspective, about finding our alignment with the help of others. Sometimes we need someone else's steadying hand to help us see straight. That evening, I moved the furniture in the living room, positioning my reading chair to take advantage of the natural light from the new window. It was a small change, but it was mine. As I sat down with a book I'd been meaning to read for months, I realized that Mike had installed more than just a window today. He'd helped install a perspective, a new way of seeing my home, my life after Sarah. The next morning, I woke up early, something I rarely did. The light was different through the new window, clearer, somehow. I made coffee and took it to my newly positioned chair, watching as the garden came alive with morning activity. A robin landed on the empty bird feeder, looked directly at me through the window, and flew off. I smiled, remembering Mike's words about life lining us up where we need to be. Maybe that was true. Maybe all the broken things, windows, marriages, hearts, were just opportunities for new installation, for better views, for growth. I reached for my phone and found the number for the garden center. It was time to fill that bird feeder. Time to tend the roses. Time to see what else might grow in this next season of my life. And as I dialed, I thought about how sometimes the most profound moments come from the most ordinary interactions. How a simple instruction, "Line me up," could echo so much deeper than its literal meaning. How being braced against a frame could make you finally feel the support you'd been missing. Sometimes we all need someone who doesn't step back. Someone who holds us steady while we find our alignment. Someone who helps us see the view more clearly. Sometimes, the installer does more than just install a window. Sometimes, they help us install a future. Total _char_count, 13,254.